The universe is vast and mysterious. Science has endeavored to explain what lies in the periphery of our understanding. But every day, new stories of unexplained phenomena confound the senses and make us question the very fabric of reality itself. These are some of those stories. These are the universe's Untold Tales. My name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to a special, spooky edition of TheAstroHistorian. This month, I will be channeling the spirit of the Halloween season and bringing you two of the ongoing lore series, Untold Tales, which is a Spectrum show that brings to light interesting and confounding mysteries of the Star Citizen universe. The first story is a mystery whose every new discovery leaves more questions than answers. Before we get started, I want to thank y'all for your continuing support. We have reached over 16,000 subscribers, so if this is your second time you've watched one of my videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified when these are released. We also have some new merch of Old Man Al Hurston from our Lore Citizen podcast, available for a limited time. Check the link in the description below for more details. With that said, let's learn more of the spooky side of the verse. In 2944, the scanning ship, the Tintern Abbey, was doing a routine mapping assignment of the outer planets of the Sol system when they got an unusual sensor reading. Deep sensor scans of the dark side of Saturn's icy moon of Lepidus revealed an unidentified object several meters below the moon's surface. The dark side of Lepidus is uninhabited. The region had been used for heavy weapons testing in the past, so the initial belief was that the object was some large unexploded ordnance, so a UEN survey and cleanup team was assigned to examine the site. Equipped with excavators and more detailed surface scanners, the team was shocked by what they discovered buried beneath the layers of rocky ice: a mostly intact spacecraft. As the ship was cleared of rock and ice, it became apparent that this ship was a preserved treasure, plucked from the annals of history itself in the form of a Robert Space Industries Zeus. The Zeus was created 800 years ago by a joint team of RSI engineers and the reckless 999th Squadron, who helped design and test the ship. It would go on to become the first commercially available ship and an icon of space travel, helping popularize space travel itself. It is still regarded as the progenitor of all modern personal spacecraft, the great-grandfather, if you will, of the Aurora and the Constellation. Today, very few original Zeuses remain, with Silas Kerner supposedly owning several in his private collection. So this discovery was almost as historical as the ship itself. The Navy quickly recognized what their discovery entailed and dispatched an archaeological team to the site. It was soon discovered that the tail designation, C6, was visible through the ice, which allowed for quick identification. Historical records provided by RSI say that the C6 disappeared on August 10, 2255, during a test flight of a new type of deep space communication system capable of transmitting into known dead regions of space. The morning of that day, the RSI team helped install the device on board while on the light side of Lepidus. The crew, Commander Brooke Cloverly, Engineer K. Scott Bashura, and Test Pilot Eve Price Murray, assembled for the flight and took off into a stable orbit. Cloverly was the youngest commander in the program at the time, and was well regarded and trusted by the executives at RSI. Bashura had almost 40 years of experience as an engineer for the company, but little information survives of Murray, as they had just joined RSI weeks before the mission. An automated station on the light side of the moon last tracked the ship in its correct elliptical orbit. Then at 1200 SET, when the first test communication was supposed to activate, the teams back on the light side were instead greeted by silence. The C6 and her crew would never be heard from again. Rescue crews attempted to conduct a seemingly thorough search of the area, but were stymied by recent severe avalanches and were unable to find any indication of wreckage. After a week of searching, the whole crew was pronounced dead. This was a particularly severe blow to the RSI test program, with the loss of the ship and its more irreplaceable crew. It should be noted that even 7 centuries later, RSI still has the name of the crew on their wall of honor in their headquarters, so this was no routine loss for the company. After layers of ice were painstakingly removed, the ship was found to be in remarkably good condition for a 700-year-old wreckage. One of the engines was clearly damaged on impact, dislodged from its casings and covered in intense scorching, and the bow armor was crumpled from where the ship had hit the surface. Otherwise, most of the superstructure remained in excellent condition, and the interior of the ship remained sealed. Investigators theorized that the C6 had most likely soft-landed, but became trapped when an ice avalanche buried it below the surface. However, it was what was inside, or rather, what was missing from inside, that would reveal more questions than answers. When historians accessed the ship's interior, they were shocked to find no trace of human remains. The Zeus's black box had been removed, as had all 3 spacesuits, 1 survival tent, and seemingly any limited supplies. Those supplies were estimated to be food, water, and carbon filters capable of sustaining 3 crew for 5 days. Investigators discussed the idea that grave robbers might have discovered the site in the ensuing centuries, but generally rejected the possibility as the ship itself remained full of valuable components, and there were no evidence anyone had searched the cabin. The further discovery of used bandages and several empty ration packets in the ship's trash further suggested that the crew had been conscious after the impact, and that 1 or more may have been injured. After 2 weeks of additional work at the site, still nothing more was revealed, so the archaeologists made the call to transport the wreck to an RSI lab on Earth for more detailed analysis. However, once RSI began their study, even more confusing details emerged. The cutting-edge communication module the ship was equipped with was in perfect working order. While future test flights would prove that the experimental module did indeed work as intended, the C6's version was working even after the crash. So, in theory, the crew could have used it to summon a rescue, but no record remained of any such transmission. Additionally, while the removal of the black box means that the details of the C6's last flight remain unknown, records salvaged from the ship's aging computer systems show that, shortly upon entering the dark side of the moon, ship authority was transferred from Commander Cloverly to Pilot Murray. The strangest and biggest mystery of them all was the discovery that, while the ship's supplies were taken, they had left the emergency flare gun for no apparent reason. It would be another 3 years before another clue to the mystery was unearthed, again raising more questions than answers. A survey crew operating deep in the dark side to help establish a water mining system was digging expository boreholes when they unearthed an empty RSI spacesuit bearing the C6 patch. Its location? Almost 300 miles from the C6 crash. 300 miles in the wrong direction from rescue. It makes you wonder, why would a member of the crew travel 300 miles in the opposite direction? Was it bad navigation, or were they running from something? Furthermore, searchers backtracked the route from this suit to the crash site for more clues, which revealed an even more bizarre and confusing clue. 10 unopened ration packs buried in the ice. Each discovery has only led to more questions. Why did the C6 ditch into the moon? Why didn't they call for help? What happened to the black box? Why did they abandon such valuable rations? Why travel 300 miles away from civilization? Why did they abandon a suit? We still haven't found any traces of bodies or other equipment taken. The mystery of the C6 has yet to be solved. For now, we can only speculate as to what caused the loss of the RSI Zeus C-6, and what the true story of her crew's final hours may have been. For now, this is one untold tale that will continue to haunt all those who seek to know the truth behind the Zeus's tragic end. Our second story is an odd tale of an unwelcome visitor from above. Early in the evening on one December day in 2945, the 127-year-old Octavia Watt was getting her home ready for Traveler's Day. As a follower of the Church of the Journey, she was going to have her 3 children join her for the holiday, as was tradition. Octavia lived in a modest home in the outskirts of Tram, a city in Asura in the Pharaon system, which has been ravaged by years of neglect and sabotage by the late Mezzers. Clean water remains scarce on the planet, and gangs clash nightly for what resources they can manage to scrounge. Little remains of the public infrastructure after the last Mezzer claimed the system was home to dissidents and rebels in 2791, causing a massive migration out of the system of people and companies. Almost 200 years later, the system has nearly entirely collapsed, struggling to hold its population and ever so carefully winning back a few industries. For Octavia, none of this mattered, as she remained for the memories. Her rural homestead reminded her of her youth in Charon, and she had no plans on leaving, despite the worries of her children. She likely would have remained in that home for the rest of her life if it weren't for that fateful day in December. When she had finished preparing the home, she stepped out to walk to her neighbors, a ex-UEE Navy veteran and family friend of the Watts, Merle Ramick. She was visiting him to ask to borrow some towels as she didn't have enough for her soon-to-arrive children. When she was about halfway home, the sky lit up with a flash, followed by a deafening sonic boom. She then heard a piercing scream cut across the sky and saw a streak slicing through the thick layer of clouds and pollution that permanently hung in the skies of Asura. A moment later, she was hurled to the ground when a second boom and flash sent her tumbling. When she got to her feet and collected her thoughts, she realized that her family home was now a blasted ruin. As the dust and smoke cleared from her vision, she saw the culprit of the attack. Sticking out of the ground, in the exact place her favorite chair used to be, was a burnt-up metal tube, covered in UEE and Marine logos. The flashes and booms roused her neighbors, who began wandering towards her home to check out the commotion. All were baffled by the sight. All but one person, Merle Ramick. Having served in the UEE Navy, he knew exactly what he was looking at, a UEE Marine nail drop pod. The nail drop pod is little more than a metal tube with reinforced bottom, inertial dampeners, and a rocket motor on top. While the nail has been in service as far back as the Second Tevaran War, since the Vandal raids had started, it had been given an upgrade by researchers at UPark using classified captured tech from the Vandal boarding pods nicknamed Spikes. Marines use these pods to insert quickly into a combat zone, literally being fired at the ground at such speeds that it would take, at most, 90 seconds to fall from orbit to the ground. If used properly, it is a devastating delivery method. However, any mistake would spell certain death to the Marine inside. Ramick acted fast, hoping he would have time to save the poor Marine who was obviously way off course. He quickly found the emergency release handle and swung the tube open. Slouched inside was a human figure in Marine armor and a sealed helmet. Merle eased the figure to the ground and carefully removed the helmet to try and ascertain how injured the trooper was. Unfortunately, it was too late for the occupant of the nail. In fact, it was about 2 centuries too late. Merle realized that the uniform and equipment that the body had on was out of date, gear that was standard issue to Marines during the reign of the last Mezzer. More strangely, there didn't seem to be any identification marks on the Marine. Before any more investigation could occur, something even stranger happened. Local authorities arrived on the scene, seemingly unprompted. This was the same overworked and under-equipped police force who would go on strike 2 years later for being underpaid and under-equipped to deal with the gang violence. Police weren't known to even patrol that far outside the city limits, but for this incident, they were on the scene almost instantly. The site was cordoned off, witness statements were taken, and the military arrived shortly thereafter to retrieve the pod and its occupant. The government has refused to comment on the incident, but did pay the now homeless Octavia a generous resettlement fee. She now lives with her daughter Elena in Cestulus in the Davian system. Many questions still remain about the strange Marine visitor that have yet to be answered. The chief one being, where did this poor soul come from in the first place? What mission was this Marine sent on, and why was he devoid of any identification? His estimated age would put him around the same time as Linton Mezzer's rule and his designation of the system as a haven for insurrectionists, so perhaps he was being sent on a covert mission gone wrong. Another incident in the Pharaon's system would indicate this is likely. Squadron 78 was tasked to bomb a terrorist training base on a moon of the Pharaon system in 2791. However, when they arrived, they found a refugee and agricultural settlement without any weapons, so they disobeyed the order and returned home. Luckily for them, the Mezzers were overthrown as the entire squadron was waiting court-martial hearings. Perhaps this unlucky Marine was in a similar predicament, tasked with deploying into a population of a planet, only to find out at the last minute what his actual mission was, and sacrificing his life to avoid civilian casualties. If that was the case, why not hail him as a hero like Squadron 78, who were showered with accolades and praise by the new UEE for refusing the immoral order? Instead, here, the entire incident was covered up, and the government pretending the Marine never even existed. Perhaps he was unaware of his fate, and a malfunction sent him off course only to land in an unlucky homestead 200 years later. If that was the case, then what happened to the rest of his squad? By their very nature, Marines are secretive. No one volunteers for the service. You are chosen to join. Even then, you aren't initiated until you pass a brutal training program on the frozen homeworld of the Marines, Corran. The planet is dotted with icy tundras and craggy rock caves, where every day is a fight for survival on the barely habitable Hell planet. Once they've passed that regimen, only then can they become full-fledged members and are given access to the numerous secret underground bases of Corran, which will be their home for their time serving. Little is even known about the world of Corran, as a completely Marine-controlled Bengal carrier battle fleet remains around the planet at all times, with orders to kill anyone who even attempts to get near the world without warning. It is safe to say that little is known about the operation of these elite warriors, and they pride themselves on keeping these secrets to the grave if necessary. The mystery of the uninvited Marine still haunts those who experienced the incident to this day. With little chance of getting answers to the nature of the mission the Marine was on, or why they ended up in the living room of a remote outpost, it is safe to say that this will remain one of the universe's untold tales. I'd like to thank you for watching. I'd like to thank those Patreons on screen now for helping me make this all possible. If you want to join them, the link is in the description. For as little as $5 a month, you get early access to videos, including a timed exclusive covering the entire history of the Star Citizen universe, whose first and second episodes have been released to the public. Check it out now to see what $5 a month will get you. For now, let me know what you think about these strange events in the comments below. And as always, remember, ex Historia ad Astra.